The international scene is looking good for Nigerians seeking justice after the 2023 presidential and governorship elections. Barely 24 hours after the United States government threatened to take all available actions against those who undermined the just concluded elections in Nigeria, the government of the United Kingdom has also announced that politicians who engage in or incited electoral violence and other anti-democratic behavior in Lagos, Rivers, and Enugu State in the March 18 governorship and state assembly elections that are held in the country will likely get a visa ban. Also on the international scene, the war that has had a major negative impact across the globe took a new turn last week with the arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin by the International Criminal Court. Meanwhile, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has warned the West against acting on the arrest warrant issued for Putin. Joining us now on this show to discuss these two major unfolding events is Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Nigeria's former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for inviting me to your program.
Thank you too, sir. Well, as they say, charity begins at home. Maybe we should start with Nigeria and the intervention of the international community, notably the US and the UK, saying that those who promoted impunity and tried to sabotage Nigeria's elections will be sanctioned by way of visa denial. But the Americans made another additional comment. They said that Nigeria too has a responsibility to prosecute electoral offenders. We have a strong system, the will, the courage to try electoral offenders. And what is the guarantee that the sanctions by the international community, in this case, US and UK, will go far enough and some people will not escape?
Well, thank you for raising this issue. Every time we have an election, both the United States and Great Britain raise this prospect of sanctions against those who, at least whom they suspect, are guilty of malfeasance in seeking to sabotage the democratic process. But then nothing ever happens. I cannot remember any person being sanctioned in terms of visa denial. We do hear from time to time names bandied around, but they've never really applied these sanctions. Why? The reason is that those who they probably know are behind this attempt at derailing the democratic process are people who have the fat bank accounts in their countries. And they are more interested in keeping those bank accounts than in applying the sanction. The ordinary foot soldiers who carry the guns, who carry the cutlasses, who carry the big sticks that we all saw on television, don't apply for visas in any case. They don't go anywhere. They're not interested in going anywhere. And that is why I just think this is all noise. It's not going to lead to anywhere. In terms of Nigeria itself imposing sanctions against these people, I was a member of the Uwais electoral reform panel that you've mentioned several times on your program. And we recommended the setting up of an electoral offences commission, and an electoral offences what? No, not panel. Electoral offences court or tribunal. No, nothing ever happened to those recommendations, and it's because Yar'Adua died. Because Yar'Adua promised us, both at the beginning and when he was receiving our report, that he would implement that report without any amendment. But he was already ill as of the time he was receiving our report. I recall when I shook his hand, there was this huge bloating on his right hand, at the back of the hand. And actually, I was afraid to shake his hands. But all I could simply, since he stretched out his hand, I took the hand, and then I said, "I'm so sorry, sir." And he said, "Don't worry, it's all right." But he was already ill, and soon after he died, and President Jonathan did not have the heart to take on that report. Therefore, we have never tried electoral offenders, and we have never punished them. Now, let's not put all the blame on the or not dealing with or not using the waste report. There are laws in our criminal code against hooliganism, against conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace, against, so you want to tell me that unless it is election time, you can break somebody's head and you will not discharge the court? Is that not assault? Dr. Abati, you are the lawyer. You don't need even an electoral tribunal to prosecute people who commit harm, grievous bodily harm. You don't need that. So why don't we use it? I was listening to a commissioner of police in one of our states yesterday night, who said the number of people they've captured, and he listed all the offenses that they had committed. And he never even made any reference to the offenses being committed during the election. And he said they will be charged to court as soon as they've completed their investigation. I do hope that that will happen. But there is one further point that I should make. The ICC is there, the International Criminal Court is there for dealing with offenses that border on hate crime, that border on sponsoring of election, or that borders on agitation against group, not just against individuals. It has been used in Cote d'Ivoire. It has been used in Kenya. So we should be careful of that. That even if we don't prosecute these people, even if the United States and Great Britain don't activate their visa sanctions, the ICC is there, and there is sufficient evidence on paper, on video, that can activate their own interests.
Thanks, Professor Akinyemi, for pointing that out. And that would lead to the next question I'd like to ask you. Based on what we have seen and what's been reported following the elections on the 25th of February and the 18th of March, is there a case that can be presented before the ICC on some of the ethnic slurs, people who have promoted or perhaps sponsored these rise that's potentially blowing up to be conflict along ethnic lines? That's one question. And since we're talking about the ICC, how powerful in terms of issuing a warrant of arrest? Let's use the Russia incident as a case study. Now, Russia has said, despite the fact that the ICC has issued a warrant of arrest amongst their member states for Vladimir Putin, Russia has said it's null and void since they are not party to the International Criminal Court. And as Dr. Bhatti mentioned earlier on, the former president, Medvedev, has said that this is a declaration of war on Russia. I'd like to get your take on both, please.
Well, let me take the one against Putin first. When I heard the news, I thought I was dreaming. I had to give myself a kick to be sure I was awake to hear that news. It has never been done before to issue a warrant of arrest against the president of a superpower, a nuclear superpower for that matter. It has never been done. And the reason it has never been done is the impossibility of it being actuated. How do you arrest the president of a superpower? You know, it's an act of futility. If you do that, and if you succeed in doing it, who says you cannot go after the Prime Minister of Britain next? After all, what they did in Iraq amounted, and this is by even a commission, a judicial commission that was set up in Britain, found Tony Blair to be guilty of one or two things. Now, how do you say that you cannot then go after the President of the United States? Because as you've rightly said in your intro, Russia is not a member of the ICC. The United States is not a member of the ICC. But you see, we need to be careful on this issue. And let me put that straight up front. I am not defending Putin. Putin has committed atrocious, egregious actions in his war against Ukraine. To kidnap children and to transport them from their country, not to protect them, but to Russify them, to turn them into Russian citizens. You put them in Russian homes with Russian families. They learn how to speak the Russian language. You indoctrinate them with your version of the history of the conflict with Ukraine. It's a crime against international law. It's a specific crime. It's not just, an inductive crime. It's a specific crime that the international law has identified. So I am not defending Putin at all. However, the question is, can you arrest him? Can you implement that warrant? And the answer really, effectively, is not really. You can't. May I recall to your attention that we've had a situation where the president of Sudan went on a visit to South Africa. And both Sudan and South Africa are members of the ICC. They are signatories to the Rome Charter. And the pressure that was brought to bear upon South Africa to arrest him and send him to The Hague. And first of all, everybody agreed that South Africa broke the law, because under the Rome Treaty, every signatory is under an obligation to carry out that warrant, under a legal obligation, not even a moral one, a legal obligation. And so South Africa was accused of breaking the law, and they had to smuggle the president of Sudan out of South Africa. He didn't stay for the conference to be over. So to that extent, all the 138, is it, or 133, I don't remember now, members of the ICC are under a legal obligation. The consequence of this is that Putin cannot visit 130-something members in the world. He cannot visit them. Can he visit the United States? The United States is not a member of the ICC. Would the United States arrest him? I doubt it. And that was what Medvedev meant by it will be a declaration of war. You know, Russia might have lost status, but it's not a banana republic. It is still a global power. It is still a nuclear power. You cannot arrest him without triggering a reaction from Russia. Now, can Putin go to the United Nations? The United Nations meets annually starting in September. And usually every president turns up to give his own version of events in the world. Under international law, the United States cannot prevent anybody from attending that meeting. It cannot, because as a host country, it lacks the legal power to stop anybody from coming. Now, would the United Nations itself now hand over Putin to the ICC? Now, that's a question that international lawyers will have to battle with. There is no answer to that, but I doubt, again, whether the United Nations will hand over Putin to the ICC. So we then come to the conclusion that yes, there are 133, 138 nations that Putin cannot effectively visit. What does this do to BRICS? Remember, the next meeting of BRICS is in South Africa. Will Putin go there? Or supposing the summit is in India, will India arrest Putin and send him to The Hague, to the ICC? Really, the answer, we will have to argue it. Legally, India should. Legally, South Africa should. But would they do that? You don't arrest the president of a superpower.
Okay, sir. The question on Nigeria.
Am I now saying that, sorry?
I said the question that was asked, the Nigerian case initially about the ICC, can they prosecute for things that happen,
Yes.
Into tribal violence and things like that, Can the ICC prosecute in that case?
Yes, the ICC could, and that's why I told you that they've done so in Kenya, they've done so in
Rwanda.
Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire, yeah.
Yes,
Congo.
so Ivory Coast.
Yes.
Congo, maybe. Yes.
Okay.
So, yes, Congo. In fact, haven't they done so in Rwanda?
Yes.
That too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, there are precedents, for them to do that. But please, if you could just let me, for one minute, finish the Russian something. Now, they have slapped Russia in the face. They have slapped Putin in the face. They have slapped China in the face. Should this warrant have been issued a week before the Chinese president went on a visit to Russia? My answer is it shouldn't have been. The former Austrian foreign minister said 3 days ago that the ICC was under pressure from Western countries to issue that warrant. I think the ICC has simply made an enemy of China. And it's unfortunate because it was not necessary. You see, you have picked countries that have a culture of what I will call, cultural shame. You have shamed them. You have shamed China. You have shamed their president. You have shamed Putin. You have shamed Russia by what ICC did. And I think it was unfortunate. They could have waited 1 week before passing that, before issuing that warrant.
Okay. So a couple of things. It's good you were able to expand upon it, that the ICC can actually, prevail over matters like ethnic interplay that happened in the elections, because there were clear videos of people, ethnic incitement, really, that said, if you're not from a particular ethnic group, you shouldn't do this. And it was targeted during the elections. And that was also sort of like the case in Kenya with the Rift Valley crisis after the elections in Kenya. The question again is, will this be pushed forward? Secondly, I'd also like to ask you, there are enough laws to prosecute people in this country, but why do we do pick and choose? Some people will argue with you that, a lot of protesters were so quick to be arrested during the NSAS, their bank account frozen, the state came hard on them. But electoral violence that people visibly did see the perpetrators of this violence, nothing can happen to them. What's your take on that? And I'd also like to have your take on, also, you said they have shamed Russia and all of that. But another thing, and China, another thing that we're not looking at is China too has been able to play the first reverse game against America. And Russia too has played the first reverse game against America. And I'll bring you to the incident that happened a couple of days ago, that the Chinese plane deliberately dumped fuel on an American reconnaissance drone. And at first, when the Russian ambassador, a Russian plane, a Russian Sukhoi plane, dumped fuel on an American reconnaissance drone, and when the Russian ambassador was summoned, he lied about what happened until the America brought out video evidence of what truly happened. Americans have not reacted to that. The second part, where China too has also shamed America, was the China foreign minister going to broker a deal between the Saudis and the Iranians, to the disbelief of America. That also hit America real hard. Because now we are playing this game of Thucydides' trap in the world among superpowers, like Thucydides talked about in his theatries on the Peloponnesian Wars. Where will all of this end for us? Where can you project it's going to balance out? Because it's a struggle for dominance. It's, like Kissinger says, it's the reordering of the world? Is the new world order that is emerging now?
Rufai, I don't know where you want me to start because you've just brought up too many issues onto the front burner. Since 15 years ago, because I came across or somebody brought it to my attention, for the past 15 years, I have been talking about the search for a new world order. And even on this program, I have alluded to the fact that we're in the transition from the old world order to the new one. What will be and I was more concerned with the absence of Nigeria, and by implication Africa, from the table where you are going to decide the parameters of this new world order. How it's going to play out, I don't know. All I know is that we are in a situation where the single global power, the United States, is on its way down, while the new global power, China, is on its way up. China has not overtaken the United States yet, but they are all going past each other. The most dangerous part for the world is when one of them makes the mistake to think it can now challenge the other, that it is powerful enough to challenge the other. And I hope that challenge does not take on the characteristics of a military confrontation. Unfortunately, even from your intro, we are seeing manifestations of a military confrontation. We saw it on the Black Sea, where, as you rightly pointed out, the Russian plane actually, let's call it spade, brought down an American drone. But then don't let us jump into this narrative in the middle. The United States has brought down a Chinese drone about 2 months ago. And yesterday, we had almost this clash between two naval ships. One, United States, the other one, China, in the Pacific. We have the signing of the agreement between between United States, Britain, and Australia over production and supply of nuclear submarines. So really, I mean, we are at a dangerous time, frankly, on the global scene. And I simply hope that these big boys will all take a deep breath and move back and try and not have too many conflicts on the plate at the right time. This is a dangerous time for the world. I'm surprised that we don't seem to be taking it seriously. Countries don't like to be challenged. And so many challenges are being mounted by all of them at the same time. We need, as I said, we need a breathing space. We need interlocutors. And when several of them who should be interlocutors are themselves the negative actors in this conflict, then it's a dangerous time for the world.
Well, Prof, quickly, yes, I get your point that it may be difficult to arrest Putin. After all, Hungary and some other countries have been saying they won't take that risk, including countries that are state parties to the Rome Statute of 2002. But can the issuance of an arrest warrant by the ICC, can it force Putin to negotiate? Could that be the ultimate objective? Putin being the first head of state of a permanent country on the Security Council that will have an arrest warrant issued against him for war crimes, for aggression in Ukraine. Can it force him to negotiate? Is there that possibility?
No. It's going to have the opposite effect. You have shamed him. I don't want to ethnicize a conflict in Europe, but the Slavic culture reacts negatively against being shamed. You have shamed him. Even if he was starting to think of having a way out of the Ukrainian imbroglio, he will not do so now, because he will not want to show the world that he has capitulated. He has allowed himself to be shamed into now backing down. So this warrant is going to have the opposite effect, I'm afraid.
All right. I'd just like to get your statements back to Nigeria and some of the electoral offenses that we saw, and this issue around there not being, in fact, you mentioned earlier on that you don't recall any electoral offender being punished or perhaps being, serving any punishment at all. How can we enforce, how can we make that process stronger? Because what's the point of having a body or having laws that wouldn't be obeyed? What is the point of having a state of impunity whereby we have laws to guide and govern the way things are done here in Nigeria? What is the best move at this point for not just INEC but security agencies?
Well, the reason why the perpetrators have never been punished is that everybody is guilty. The people who should prosecute offenders are themselves part of the people who engineer these foot soldiers. There are, at times you listen to commentators and you think there are saints and there are devils on this issue. But actually, no. And that is why I think some of your commentators keep pointing out that people have been killed in Kano, they have been killed in Sokoto, they have been killed in Kaduna, they have been killed in Rivers, they have been killed in Lagos, they have been killed in Delta. It's a national disgrace. It's a national calamity. So where then are you going to get the people who will prosecute? The police who should prosecute are under the executive directive of the president, because the president appoints the IG. And please don't get it into your mind that, the IG is independent of the people who appointed him. And therefore, he has the ability or he has the whatever it is to go after people who may end up being their supporters. Governors have become laws unto themselves. They have immunity in any case. And to that extent, they cannot even be arrested if you could even prove that it is the governors who gave the direct orders to these foot soldiers. So what we're going to, I mean, you've asked for the way forward. Number one, I think that the Electoral Offences Tribunal Commission should be set up, and Electoral Offences Tribunal should then be set up by the commission. But then you then go back to the issue I've raised. Who does the appointment? Who appoints them? They are going to be appointed from amongst us. And the people who are going to appoint them, again, are the people who are involved in this, to use the word malfeasance, is even an understatement. The Waste Commission suggested that the National Judicial Commission should be the appointing body for INEC. We never thought of who will appoint the members of the commission and members of the tribunal. Presumably, they are going to be appointed by the same people who appoints judges and who appoints policemen and who appoints INEC. So really,
Okay.
we need a change of mind.
Okay.
Spiritually,
Okay, sir.
we need a change so that we don't turn elections into wars.
Okay, sir.
Look, let me just take one more minute. I grew up in a political home. My father was a politician in the 50s. He was principal of a secondary school, and he belonged to a political party of the ruling party in the West. The chairman of the board of governors of that school belonged to the opposition party. My dad never used his connection with the ruling government in the West to remove that chairman who belonged to the other party. And that chairman gave my dad all the cooperation that he could give him to make him a successful principal.
Okay, sir.
I even remember that chairman was the chairman of the naming ceremony of one of my sisters. That was the kind of political atmosphere I grew up in.
Okay, sir.
When did things change?
Okay, sir. I have a quick follow-up to that. But is it that for the want of laws? Because you said you have never seen somebody be prosecuted for an electoral offense. We've actually had somebody. Professor Peter Ogban was prosecuted, for the role he played in the elections, and he went to jail. And it was because the INEC rec followed up the case. Mike Igini followed up the case to the latter. So if there's that level of empowerment, is it that people are not just doing it because of their selfish gains, and we should hold people to accountable? Because we keep talking about the Electoral Commission. Yes, there's a good argument for that. But the fact that you can still do, if you are forthright and honest, you can still do those prosecutions. You can still follow up the case with visible evidence on ground. I mean, Professor Peter Ogban's case should be a watershed in all of this. What do you think about that, sir?
I agree with you. I think we need more. Is he a prof? No, it's not a professor. We need more Mr. Ikpene. Is that his name?
Igini.
Or in
Igini.
Ikene. I always enjoy him when he comes on your program. We need more people like him as Rex, or even on the National Commission, or even as the chairman of INEC, although I doubt how long he will succeed at that particular level. I know of immensely, incredibly people with integrity in this country. I've served, because I've served on many committees, I've served with some of them. But something goes wrong when the pressure gets to that point where you are dealing with election of governors, election of presidents. You know, I think this is an issue with all of us, including you. When I say you, I don't mean you personally. All of you on Arise, on channels, all of us are going to have to sit down. Let me tell you one thing. After one of your programs, I have got in touch with one of the people who turned up on your program, and I said, how can leave government out of this? How can we get together to form a reconciliation committee in Lagos? And since then, he's got in touch with others who have then got back to me and say, why make it Lagos? Why not make it national? We need to talk to each other. We need to start the mending process. Rufai, I know your mantra. You cannot have this mending process without justice. All I will say is each one of us will do the best that he can. Individuals cannot set up tribunals. That has to be set up by government. But individuals, as communities, can set up reconciliation committees and try and reach out across the board to groups so that we can start the mending process.
Well, Prof, yes, healing and reconciliation, very popular phrases in Nigeria at this time. But healing and reconciliation did not work after the Civil War. Some people, in fact, believe that the Civil War has not yet ended. Healing and reconciliation did not end after the crisis of 1993 and the attempt to have a truth and reconciliation panel. What is the hope that this time around there will be healing and reconciliation, considering how the political gladiators have dug themselves even deeper into their trenches? Except, you know, we just want to talk and talk and talk and move on, as we did in the past. One or two people will write one or two books, and that's the end, until the next crisis.
Dr. Abati, we cannot just fold our hands and adopt the attitude that we've tried in the past and we have failed. Don't forget that it is even after the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa that Rwanda took place. Don't forget that it's after Rwanda that Kenya took place. But we can't give up, can we? Maybe at a point in time we will be so frightened by what we have done that we will think, you know, the fire next time will probably consume all of us if we don't step forward. But I've never subscribed to wringing my hands and say, well, we failed in the past, therefore we shouldn't try again. Maybe what do you call our traditional rulers, our spiritual fathers will step forward. This man did his best. General Abdul Salam and Bishop Coker, they tried, but obviously they didn't succeed. We see what happened in spite of all the peace treaties that were signed. But we can't then just give up, can we?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much, Professor Akinyemi, for your views this morning on the International Criminal Court and Vladimir Putin, and of course on the Nigerian elections and electoral crimes.